For Sunday, February 25th, you've found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda today, Georgia's first ever cut in the income tax. In Atlanta, a city audit says there might be gambling in River City. And guns everywhere. We'll try and talk about that subject from a Georgia perspective. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us on this Sunday. We have a first-timer on the Georgia Gang today, Jake Evans. Glad you're here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
You're younger than the rest of us. You'll take up the conservative side of the aisle, I hope, for Phil Kent, who is in Washington at that conservative gathering.
He's going to Washington a lot lately.
Yeah, he's getting his credentials redone as a bona fide conservative.
Okay.
And I think as we taped the other day, he was listening to President Trump.
That's right, on Friday morning.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, here we are. We don't have such grand concerns. We have more mundane concerns right here in Georgia. And we're going to begin with, it's really sort of odd to think about this. Georgia has effectively had a flat income tax since, I think I'm correct in this, 1937. Mm-hmm. It has never been cut.
That's right.
It's never been adjusted. And Alexis, you've been here a while.
Yeah, that's
First ever income tax cut in a conservative state. What do you make of that?
Well, it's because they're so low to start with, and you could get with your deductions, and they're off. They're 6%. Right. And with all the deductions you can take, you can pay less than that because of the federal. That's the only reason we are getting the tax cut is because of the great windfall, quote unquote, that nobody actually knows what it's going to be. That with the federal tax cuts.
Yeah, that windfall there started out at $475 million, and now they're saying it could be over $1 billion. I kind of like the fact that Governor Deal is so temperate because he went through the recession. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to do a tax cut at first, but the General Assembly kind of made him go along with it, it looks like to me.
Yep.
And it's conditional. They're going to drop it to 5.75% now. And then pending another vote and see how it goes, it might come down to 5.5%.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that Governor Deal stood at the Capitol. He was flanked by Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle and Speaker Ralston and an enormous amount of state legislators. This is a big win for the governor, a big win for Georgia, and a big win for the legislature. The only thing that I would caution, to Alexis' point, we don't really know exactly what we're going to get from this windfall. But I hope that the governor and the legislature will take a look at how does this affect the working poor. Because if you start cutting taxes, people who are middle class and up are going to be the bigger beneficiaries. And so we've got to also look at how do we protect working class Georgians, the working poor, who go to work every day, but because of our current tax system and our income tax and state tax, they are just taxed at a little bit of a higher rate than some of the other folks that make a little bit more money.
But Jake, they're going to double the standard deduction. That seems to be to take care of the working poor, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think this is it. I agree with Theron, and I think it's a huge win for Georgia. I mean, I think we do have to note at the national level that the reason why this was initiated is Trump and a Republican-controlled Congress for both in the Senate and the House created a windfall, but first time since 1937, as you said, that we do have a state income tax. We're putting more money in the pockets of hardworking Georgians, and I think this is going to increase the fiscal conservatism and responsibility from a GDP standpoint. Stock market is soaring and unemployment's at lows. So this is what happens when we have fiscal conservatism leadership.
Well, there are a lot of Republicans, Alexis, who you haven't heard it this time around, who want to do away with the income tax altogether and make taxes more consumption-based. But I think they're just too cautious. That's too dangerous, I think.
Well, it is, and especially to make it consumption-based. If people don't consume, you're not going to get the tax money.
So if you have an Obama recession, you don't have any tax money,
so
right?
If you have a Bush recession, you don't have anything, right? But paying for wars. But go ahead.
Staying on taxes a little bit, it's not a major thing to me anyway, but it is interesting that the House passed a bill that is opposed by used car dealers. I would prefer to call it honesty in car sales, where if I go buy a car for $10,000, I pay a transaction tax on $10,000. But apparently you could do it by book value, which would be lower, so you pay lower taxes. So is that a tax increase? I don't think so.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, they cut the overall percentage to 6.75 prior, assuming this goes through, prior to this legislation for used cars, you could establish the taxation at the book value so that there was a little bit of opportunity for manipulation. So this is really just, I think, creating uniformity in the tax system for the sale of cars.
All right.
Well, will it keep the used car dealers honest, though, if they're going to charge more than the book value?
They're really the only group of people who are in lower standing than journalists. Or no, we are. We are, aren't we? I think at the moment we are.
Possibly.
Or lower than lawyers.
Yeah, or lawyers, that's true. Well said. The pace of the legislature hasn't really picked up yet. But they did in the that second adoption bill, the one that interests me because of my concern for faith-based groups. It has moved out of committee. It looks like it's going to pass. I don't think it's going to drive Amazon away, but I think it could bring in more adoption agencies. And it is churches who have been in the vanguard of adoptions in this country forever.
Yeah, but it's still very troubling because it definitely is a license to discriminate, because they don't have to, not only do they not have to offer services to gay couples, they don't have to offer services to a gay child who is seeking adoption. So it's just, you know, I don't understand
I don't think there are a lot of those, though, are there?
I have no idea, but I'm just saying to single them out that way as a class to discriminate against is just wrong.
I don't think it's an exercise in discrimination, Theron. I think it's an exercise in faith and belief.
No, I definitely think, I totally agree with Alexis. And the thing that really is so baffling about this, Dick, is right when we think that the legislature is continuing to work in a bipartisan manner on an adoption bill that we know kind of got derailed last session. But the thing that really is just so disheartening to me is that I truly believe that if we focus on the foster care children, I truly believe that a heterosexual couple who wants to find a loving home for a foster child, a gay couple can actually do the same thing, find a loving home for a foster care child. And so I think that if we're really talking about what's best for these children, then I think whether you are gay or straight, if you truly want to open up your home and bring in a foster child and take care of that child, then these agencies should not be able to discriminate on you because of that.
And plus, they shouldn't be able to take public dollars. If they want to do their thing, go let them do their thing in the private sector, but don't get
well, now
public money to
that
support
is a
your
question.
activity.
You're right. I would be willing to look at that, but I think the fact is faith-based groups have been driven out of Georgia because of that. I mean, they do have deep religious beliefs that I think should be observed in the name, just as you say, Theron, of finding loving homes for children and adolescents and anybody stuck in the foster care system.
And this notion that same-sex couples can't love a foster child better than a heterosexual couple, it's just you know, unbelievable to me. And then I do want to say that we're continuing to have this conversation where we're trying to bring 50,000 new jobs to this region from Amazon. And I just think that the world is watching this legislative session, and we just got to be careful that we don't continue to go down this slippery slope of discriminatory bills.
Just to chime in, I mean, I think it's important to note that this legislation is not going to inhibit same-sex couples from adopting. I mean, I think what it does do is it provides adoption agencies who do embody moral and religious backgrounds from furthering those backgrounds. And
gay people have moral and religious backgrounds. Are you saying they don't?
No, I'm absolutely not. I'm not suggesting that whatsoever. I'm just saying that the proponents allege that if these religious organizations and agencies do not have an opportunity to further that, they're just not going to engage in the adoption process. However, to Theron's point, I think we do have to be mindful of the reality that we have to continue the momentum in Georgia we have, making Georgia a business-friendly state. And religious freedom, any bill that even acknowledge that right now creates a real concern for major companies to consider and incorporating in Georgia.
Anyway, I was going to talk a little bit about the puppy mill situation, but we're out of time, and we're all in favor of healthy puppies, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're good with that. And we'll also, just for you who are thinking about guns in the General Assembly, we're going to talk about that later in the broadcast. When we return, though, we're going to look at the City of Atlanta auditor who found there might be some corruption in the airport contracting system. Gee, do you think there might be gambling right here in River City? Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
So the City of Atlanta auditor, which is an important position, issued a report this week that there might be corruption in the awarding of airport contracts. And I really did have to laugh. It reminded me of the musical with River City, and it reminded me of Casablanca, the movie.
Right.
Do you think there might be some gambling going on here? What tickled me about it, Theron, is it said only the construction contracts. It didn't purport to examine the concession contracts. So that's where the smoke has been, and that's where I was kind of looking for fire. I was disappointed.
Well, this auditor had to do the job of really making sure, and this is just a routine audit. This is something that wasn't done because of all this talk about corruption at the airport. But one of the things I want to just clear up is that there's nothing illegal about an airport contractor to giving a contribution to a person who is seeking elective office. Right. And so I think this whole notion that it's just pay to play because a contractor, whether they're currently under contract at the airport or bidding for a contract, there's nothing illegal about doing that. But I think that also what it talked about is making sure that Mayor Bottoms has an opportunity to really come with full transparency. As she
now you're getting close to what I really think.
Yeah, I know where you're going. And so I think that the story, while it did have a negative tone to it, I think it allows the mayor to continue her process of making sure that the procurement department is transparent and that she can truly reform this department and really just gain back public trust on how contracts are bidded at the airport.
Now we have Jake here, who's a lawyer, and he will probably agree with me that the auditor needed to get out in front of what's going on in the federal prosecutor's office. So I was thinking it was a bit of a CYA. Oh yeah, we're looking at this when all the indictments come down. That's probably clever work on the auditor's part.
I mean, I know B.J. Pack personally, and he's a U.S. attorney, and I do think that he is going to take a full look at what's going on. I agree with Theron in that I know Keisha Lance Bottoms, I know some of her people, and I hope that she's going to continue what she's initiated from the start, which is full transparency, and I think she's going to promote that, but I think that's absolutely indispensable looking at what we're coming forward from, and this audit did kind of have some indicators that there was some manipulation and could be something at play here that's problematic.
Well, I think it still remains to be seen exactly what it is. I remember an audit report that they did on the Workforce Development Agency, and they just didn't understand how it worked, and they had some mistakes about how they were characterizing activities that were perfectly in line with good practices, but they didn't conform to audit practices.
And by the way, we should note that what the U.S. Attorney is looking into so far that we know is not related to the airport.
Right.
It's basically basic city contracting functions. The city, by the way, continuing the work started by Kasim Reed, the Bottoms administration has now done away with the two key pension boards for city employees. That's the big money pot. They want that. It's my understanding that the legal actions are going to continue, but I don't think there's much more to say. Kasim wanted it, council passed it, Keisha Lance Bottoms is moving ahead with it. And I think city pensioners have a little bit of reason to be a little queasy about how their money's invested and spent. I don't know. In DeKalb County, Burl Ellis has been awarded more than $1.1 million in attorney's fees for the situation he went through. I can't argue it, it's the law. Yeah. The guy did spend 8 months in prison. Yeah. But Jake, those are expensive attorney's fees.
Those are. I will say that was a lot of attorney's work that was provided, but he was paid, you know, I think around $220,000.
Yeah.
But the law is the law. I think that it says that if he is found not guilty, he was found not guilty. I found it interesting that the district attorney did elect not to continue with the case on the basis.
It was actually a hung jury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, plus there was a second trial too, so that's why the legal fees added up.
And there was an appeal, so I have to support my fellow attorneys here for legal fees. I can't tell you, I've never seen invoices that are large.
So other than losing 8 months of his life, he's whole.
Well,
I mean, he got his salary back,
But
got
you
his
can never
pension
be
rights.
whole after losing 8 months of
I know
life.
that, and that's
Okay.
I'm saying that somewhat ruefully.
I think also, the county commission really wanted to put this behind them as well. I mean, so they had a robust debate about it. There was a lot of talk about the fee and everything, but the bottom line is that the law is the law. That now former CEO Ellis can go on with his life, and whether the amount was significant or not, that's not an issue here. I think that the bottom line is that the justice system played itself out, and he deserves to be paid, and let's just move on from it.
And we don't have a lot of time left in this segment, but out of nowhere, Megan Hansen, state representative from Brookhaven, Republican, introduced a bill to do away with DeKalb's chief executive and form of government, something that I've supported through the years. But I must say the timing's odd because Michael Thurman has kind of righted the ship in DeKalb.
Exactly.
He has a reputation for integrity.
Yeah.
I don't.
It is counterproductive, and it's really outrageous that Representative Hansen would do this. But what's more important is that we've talked about on the show.
Well, she's up for re-election, and her opponent favors the same thing.
And as Mayor Margaret Oliver put it, it's definitely a political stunt. But I want to just say that we said on the show, just go through the accomplishments of this CEO and this commission.
Right.
Budget deficit, spending cut. They're about to pave 300 miles of roads in the county to get rid of the potholes. He's cleaning the sewers. I mean, Dick, this is the point that I'm talking about, where this county's got to make a decision on how good they want to be and continue to work together. And to me, this is just a distraction. And then lastly, do we really want to be having this conversation at a time where when the county puts in $140 million into MARTA, and the Republicans want Democrats to work with them to support this transit bill?
Well, I would argue that the form of government had been a little bit different, namely a traditional form of government. We wouldn't have 400 miles of unpaved roads in DeKalb, and we wouldn't have the problems we have. Now, I think you're correct. Thurman is on the way to fixing a lot of them, but I think the Republicans are right. The form of government needs to be changed.
But the way in which they're going about it is not good.
It's not going to happen either.
Right.
So what the heck?
No, another stunt by the Republicans trying to sneak it in the legislature.
Well, I have to. The reality is, if you're overseeing a $1.2 billion budget, which is what DeKalb has, and the CEO of DeKalb also has 7,000 employees, that, regardless of party, that's a lot of power for one person to have, and that can lead to a lot of opportunities and temptations that maybe otherwise wouldn't exist if it was a more evened out.
But Jake, I know that you're definitely for a surplus. When the CEO got there, they were $22 million in the hole. Now they got $75 million. And so I know, being a good attorney, that you definitely want to make sure that you're always in a process where you can have money to spend to try to improve the county.
We got to get out. We'll stay with that if it happens, but it's not going to happen. So we're going to transition. It'll be a little bit awkward, but we're going to stick our toes into the gun battles that are going on. It's really uncomfortable to talk about, but we're going to try it. So stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
And I think everything the General Assembly did this week was colored by sort of an overall tension and apprehension over the shootings in Florida, and I think the realistic demand of Americans that we do something.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
So it was a very large protest gathering, mostly of mothers, down at the Capitol.
Yes.
They got a
Moms
reasonably.
demand action for sensible gun.
Is that what it was?
Guns and what is it? Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Well, anyway, they got a reception, but
sense.
I got the feeling that while we may see some action on the federal level, I don't see that there's going to be any movement at the state capitol with this Republican control, except there is one bad loophole I think they need to close, and that's been adequately discussed. What do you think? Do you think there's anything concrete is going to develop?
Not until we have a change in the legislative makeup and perhaps at the governor's office too, to the Democratic side.
Yeah, we're not going to take away anyone's guns.
Well, the president said this week that he encouraged the states not to wait on the federal government to act. So there are some things that state government can do. But, I talked a little bit about it next week. I think the bottom line is this. Georgia's got to really close the loophole, but we got to really focus on how people who clearly have a mental illness can get access to guns. And then I think we also got to really look at making sure that people who clearly have a criminal background history, or folks who, maybe an age limit, how they have access to the guns. And so I think you can protect American lives and also protect gun rights.
Well, let's explain that loophole, by the way, because that was fascinating, the reporting on that if you are deemed mentally ill, you're sent to the FBI database, but in Georgia, the law requires that your name be stricken after 5 years if you've completed your treatment, I presume. And apparently there are hundreds of names each year
who get taken out.
Get taken off the registry and then can go out and buy a gun if they so choose. That goes to that mental health part of the discussion.
Right.
Well, also I think the real culprit is these assault weapons. They need to be banned altogether, and that's the difference between not having a gun and not having a weapon of war. And that's what's doing these mass killings, is the weapon of choice.
I don't know. What do you think, Jake?
These discussions, I mean, it's important to discuss these issues. And I think one of the biggest problems, regardless of party again, is we don't really start talking about it until it happens. And we have the reactionary versus the prospective component to it. Would just removing guns entirely stop violence in the United States?
Well, if you can't kill 30 people in 10 seconds, that'll, you know, if you just have a handgun, you can only kill maybe 2. So, I mean, anything is going to, that's definitely going to make a difference.
Well, no, it's trigger pull. It's bang, 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 bang.
Handgun.
Handguns and the AR-15 trigger pull.
No, the AR-15, that's what I'm saying. That needs to be banned.
Yeah, but with those,
what's the difference?
What these young students are doing in Florida, in Parkland, you know, protesting the Capitol. I mean, Georgia, you know, we better be mindful of the passion and really the outrage that these students have about all these killings that we're seeing in our country. And so we better really, you know, be a leader in this issue and really take some proactive measures.
And I agree with. I mean, I agree that civic engagement is always good. There's no doubt about it. And the president invited people to come in. A lot of presidents maybe wouldn't have done that. I mean, it just took
pretty interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I think
what's going to come of it is the question.
Yeah, he came forth.
Teachers.
Well, he directed the U.S. Attorney General to initiate legislation that inhibits turning a semi-automatic weapon into a fully automatic weapon. So I do think it has reached a point that change and sensible regulation will happen.
Well, and as I get out, let me mention this, because I think I see a trend. Some of our local school systems around the state are actually discussing concealed carry permits for teachers.
Just one that I know of. Most in Metro Atlanta are not.
No, not in Metro Atlanta, no. But outstate, you might see some movement there. But I don't think General Assembly's going to do anything. So, gosh, we're out. When we come back, winners and losers. That was quick.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And not to put the rookie on the spot, so I'll start with you, Theron.
Okay, good. Well, Billy Henderson, Hall of Fame high school coach from my high school, Clark Central, unfortunately passed last week.
Your coach?
Yeah, my coach played on his last team that he coached in high school. So we love Billy Henderson. He's a Hall of Fame coach in Georgia.
He's in every Hall of Fame there is.
Yeah. Next is shout out some Republicans. Ashley Bell, who just got appointed by the Small Business SBA as a regional administrator for Region 4. Also, Bruce Lavelle, who's been appointed as a regional advocate, appointed by the president for SBA. And then also, my good friend Rodney Bullard just released a book this Tuesday called Heroes Wanted. And so I encourage everyone to go pick it up. Rodney is a great author and a great man, works for Chick-fil-A, and definitely want to give him a good shout out.
All right, good. Played for the Air Force Academy. I found that fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, how about you?
Well, my first
Jake,
winner.
Good to have you this week.
Good.
Take your shots.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be here. First is Billy Graham. I think we have to celebrate the life that he had in the 99 years that he lived. I still remember my mother watching him give his beautiful and passionate speeches when I was a child, and I think we would be remiss not to mention him. Governor Deal, I really thought that getting the tax bill through this session was going to be unlikely, but I think him working together with Casey Cagle, being able to push that through and create the momentum we have in Georgia.
David Ralston, they all got on the same page.
That's right. And then
like an election year to help.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then last winner would be Sam Olin's landing at Denton's a great law firm. I'm happy for him.
Okay. Yeah, you would have some connections with Denton's, wouldn't you?
Some really good connections with Denton's.
How about that? All right. Alexis.
All right. I'm going to salute Elizabeth Broadway Brown. She's a senior at associate at Alston Bird, and she's the new president-elect of the Georgia Association of Black Women Attorneys. So congratulations to her. Also, the High Museum is going to be the winner, and City Hall. They had prominent roles in the Black Panther movie. The High Museum was used as the British Museum, and City Hall was used as the United Nations. So,
have you seen it?
I have. It was good.
Great movie, Dick. You should go see it.
I mean, it's as good as everybody says it is.
It's wonderful.
Wakanda.
Right. That's it. That it for you?
Yeah, I'm going to stop. Yeah.
Okay.
My mom's demanding action. There are my winners. And then happy birthday to Theron.
Happy birthday.
And Dick.
Yeah.
And Theron had quite a birthday party.
Don't tell people.
Check his Facebook page.
You can't hide it anymore because of Facebook. All right. I have a cynical loser for the week, and I'll turn it into a winner by saying the Winter Olympics are over. Thank goodness.
Ouch.
Let's get back to real sports. And I also think that we all ought to at least have a moment or two of silence in our lives for the children who lost their lives in Parkland, Florida at that high school. But I would also argue 3,200 student high schools are too large and things happen. We'll see you next week on the Georgia Gang.